So let's talk about Misguided. So Misguided is the first song on the album, and it's actually the last song I recorded for the album. I made it a couple days before everything was being finalized. So there was originally going to be another song on the album called Midnight Chills, and that song, I really like it, and I want to make it into a song at some point, but it just had too much that still needed to be done. I needed to re-record a lot of the vocals, I needed to add more vocal layers and things like that. There was just so much that was going to need to be done to get that song to a finished state. And I happened to just write Midnight Chills one day and then record it that night. And I realized that just in that day, it was closer to being done than Midnight Chills was. So big shout out to Jay Paris. He featured on Frozen, but he also is basically the executive producer of this album. He did so much of the mixing and mastering. He was working really hard with me on Midnight Chills, and we were both disappointed that we couldn't keep it for the album, but at the end of the day, it just made a lot more sense to add Misguided instead. I was really vibing with it. I played it for a friend, and he loved it, and so we just decided this had to be on the project. Plus, the other pro of adding Misguided is that I felt like it made a lot of sense as the first song on the project. It kind of just sets the tone. It gives a little look into my personality, the way my mind works, things like that. And it feels like a really personal song that's not the most personal song on the project, but still, personal. It lets you sort of get to know me a little bit. And I just thought it was a really good introduction. I like the way the beat comes in kind of slowly, and it's just super chill. So I was really happy to have this as the first song. So as far as what the song's really about, it's about a lot of things. The first verse is definitely about, this is a controversial term, but it's more or less about cancel culture. Not making any, sweeping generalizations here, but I feel like a lot of times big artists or famous people get a really hard time when they make a small mistake. And at the end of the first verse, I sort of summarize that by saying way less room for mistakes at the top. It's just something I realized and something I feel like we need to be aware of as a society, the way that we treat famous people differently from regular people. Personally, I just think compassion works in a lot of cases, and I think it's really just good to have empathy for the people who might be making the mistakes, and that's sort of what I'm trying to get at in this first verse. It's not a super controversial or groundbreaking take or anything. I feel like a lot of people don't like cancel culture, and a lot of people think that, there's some nuance to it and things like that, and that's sort of what I'm getting at with this verse. It's really just stuff I've thought about. Plus, when I think about a lot of my favorite artists, I've realized that a lot of them are either shrouded in controversy or they died. That's sort of what I say in the first verse, 5 years is a legend, and if you're not in heaven when it's up, then you turn into the devil, right? You've got this certain amount of time to be here and be legendary, and then you make a mistake, or you die. And that's how society tends to treat a lot of famous artists. And that's something I've seen with my favorite artists. My top 10 list is either shrouded in controversy or no longer alive, which is just sort of sad to see, and I feel like there's probably some better way that society can handle when famous people make mistakes than just treating them as if they're not human anymore. The second verse totally switches up the topic. It's all this whole song is sort of talking about success and striving for success and what happens when you're successful and things like that. The second verse, I'm really talking about, where people are seeking validation and recognition. A lot of people will look for recognition from the haters. They'll look for validation from the people who don't like them. And I've definitely done that myself, where I've been like, oh, why doesn't this person like what I'm doing or whatever? Meanwhile, there are plenty of people out there who are supportive and want you to achieve your dreams and do the things you love, but humans are just better at focusing on the negatives. And that's sad. So I kind of just try to talk about that almost as a way to remind myself, focus on the people who are really there for me, not the people who aren't there for me, because they're not going to be there for me no matter what, right? The people who are there for me, they're supportive, I can trust them, I love them, and that's what you should really be grateful for in life. At the very end of the verse, I say, no matter how hard you hug her, you'll miss her soon as she's gone. And so that's sort of I'm talking about taking all this stuff for granted. Even when you don't take it for granted, you're hugging someone, you're super grateful for their existence, things like that. It's still the case that no matter how grateful you are, when they're gone, you'll wish you were more grateful. You just can't avoid missing someone when they're gone, whether that's they're far away or they die or whatever it is. It's just, you can never be grateful enough. And so that's sort of the reminder at the end of that verse. And so the final verse is really about happiness and what that means and how to achieve it and all that sort of stuff. So, I say, I once thought to be happy you needed proof, but the happiness is the proof. I think that's true, but I also think I still sometimes feel like to be happy I need proof, right? I'm dropping this album, I'm trying to get people to listen to it. Why do I care about the numbers, right? I have a job that will sustain me after I graduate. I don't need this album to do well to support myself, which is very fortunate. So why do I care about that validation? Why do I need that proof to be happy, to feel like this album was worth it? Because at the end of the day, I'm happy with the music. It's on my playlist. I love listening to it, so I should just be happy with that, right? But we all fall into that numbers game, and we all sometimes feel like we need this proof, we need this external validation to show that we're happy, and that's really difficult, especially when nowadays it is such a like fame-oriented world where with social media you can get famous super quickly, and it feels like everyone's doing it. It feels like you should be doing it too. But you can do anything you want and be happy, and it feels like you're happy until you see what other people are doing on Instagram or whatever, right? And I sort of just talk about that in this verse. And at the end of the verse, I'm really just like summing up all of these thoughts in my head that are like really unresolved, right? Hope my album is timeless. Hope we fix up the climate. Live for love and unwinding, right? Like just talking about the things I want, the things I strive for, maybe don't have, maybe do have. And at the very end, like the message of all of this is that I have no idea what I'm talking about. The song's called Misguided because I feel like, as the person I am, I'm a fortunate enough person to have had a lot of like great things happen to me in life. And I was born into a great family and all this sort of stuff. So I just don't put myself in other people's perspective all the time. And a lot of times when I see issues going on politically or otherwise, I notice that sometimes I make it out to be simpler than it really is. And that's where I think I'm sometimes misguided. It's kind of like a catch-all statement. Like if you don't like anything I said in this song, I don't even necessarily believe that I'm right. And that's definitely kind of a cop-out when I'm talking about controversial stuff to at the end be like, I don't know what I'm talking about. But that is what happens in my mind, and I'm trying to just capture those emotions that I feel like a lot of people have when they're thinking about controversial things like this, just like the meaning of life, or like, how to be happy, or like what fame is, or why do we want fame, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, so that's Misguided. I tried my best with this one. I'm really proud of it. Hope you give it a listen, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.